two stories that we're going to hear, a story about the Woodland Land Trust and about public housing residents organizing to make a difference in New York City and East Harlem and the Bronx. And what Marie wanted me to make sure that I shared with you all is that both the Woodland Community Land Trust and the East Harlem James Weldon Johnson stories were a part of a global conference a year ago in Istanbul, Turkey, which was part of the United Nations conference on the city summit and the future of communities in the new world after the 21st century. And this conference really focused on what is sustainable development in the future that we're entering in together. And people were amazed that grassroots women leaders had quite a strong vision of what sustainable development looks like for themselves, for their families, for their neighbors, and for people in this country in both rural and community neighborhoods, rural and urban neighborhoods. And I think that as they tell their stories, we might want to listen in particular for what vision were they operating from, what values are they holding up in their community, who's participating in the community, what kind of diversity is at work in the community, and how are they planning together and adapting their plans to make sure that the community keeps building. So part of what we're trying to get a sense of is how we go about really doing long-term community development with each other in a way that's sustainable. And I think you'll hear that in each of these stories. So if we can listen.
Very pleased that you all could come, and to tell you a little bit about our community. The vision that people had 20 years ago, they wanted to build health clinics, they wanted to have education, they wanted to have housing. But the stumbling block was that most of the land was owned by absentee corporations and they didn't have access to land. So they learned about the community land trust concept from a gentleman named Bob Swan from the Institute for Community Economics, which Woodland is now working with through the Schumacher Society on land trusts. Part of the vision was that meeting the needs of people for land and housing. Also, we want a better place for our children to grow up, a safe and caring place to learn what is important about life. We want there to be a place for people to come home after retirement age, a place to share wisdom and other assets. We want there to be an awakening to new understanding of developing our human potential through meaningful work and useful information. And now, to share about our community is Marie, who will...
Okay, I'm going to show you them. I think I don't need that. Can you all hear me? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. What I wanted to show, and let me take a pencil. So let me take one of these so I can get at a distance. This heart, like the other program, represents the heart of our community. This is where Roses Creek Holler is. A holler is a 4-mile road for us up the mountain, and there are about 80 families that live in this 4-mile stretch in this little holler called Roses Creek. On Roses Creek, the Land Trust has bought 5 parcels of land amounting to about 150 acres. And of that 150 acres, we've given 17 families 1 acre each to build their home. And then they have common grounds where they can choose what they want to do. And then we have forest lands that we use for firewood and things like that. But we started talking about, since we knew this conference was going to be about neighborhood, we thought, what is our neighborhood? And the neighborhood is the area where we depend, as you all did, going around the block to your schools and to your stores. We figured out that for our people, we go about 20 miles to the town of Jellicoe, which has a population of 1,200 people. And that's where some of us go to church. That's where we go for groceries. There's a hospital in Jellicoe. There are 2 banks in Jellicoe. The police station is there. There are 2 nonprofit groups, the Crazy Quilt and the Mountain Women's Exchange. So those are things that we go to Jellicoe for. Now some of us track our way 29 miles up to Williamsburg, where there's a mall and there's a mission, Cedar Ridge Mission. And in all of these places we have some of our friends or relatives. Okay, and then we sometimes go about, 30 miles down to La Follette, where we have a mall, a hospital, the jail, Save-A-Lot, our electric utility, and we travel about that far for good fishing. And then, for Kentucky, which is the largest city, it has about 15,000, and it's a 30-mile trek over Cumberland Mountain. But we go there for the dentist, there's a hospital, there's a mall, and some of our young people go to college over there. In fact, David, where is he? The tall guy, he goes to college.
What was the tall guy?
The other tall guy.
Now, in our immediate neighborhood, there are several churches that people go to. 4 miles up the road is Clarefield, and this is where some of the early organizing of nonprofits happened. So we go up there now for the Model Valley Development Corporation. They have a public library, they have a little clinic, there's a clothing store, and rural legal services. So that's almost a little village square that we created through the nonprofit efforts of people. And we go a little further up to Hamlin Town, and there is a hardware store and an auto parts, and a school, one grade school. And there's one grade school over here in White Oak, where we have the Parent Resource Center, and we have people from there right now. Oh, I forgot to mention Mildred's. There's a child care center down here in Jellicoe that some of our people participate in. And when we have visitors, the area that we use for our tourism is bringing people down this road where there's a lot of strip mining. So the thing we have to show people is strip mining.
Pretty soon haircut.
Right, and also this circle around here, this is about the distance that people used to go hunting or to gather blackberries or their herbs or whatever. And in terms of, we realized that we were representing more from a woman's perspective, but before we left the group, we realized that our men folks traveled as far as Knoxville, either to bring coal in their trucks, or they do a lot of construction work, and they'll come back and forth, and that's a 70-mile trip. And we bring a lot of our timber up to Corbin, Kentucky, which is, I didn't put the time, but that's probably more like a 50-mile trip. So all of the natural resources of this area go out of the area. And some of our people have created a little neighborhood by the people they trade with. This area, I mentioned that. Now let's see, what did I forget?
I've got a question.
No, did I forget anything?
You forgot to say the cemeteries are in our
Oh, the
town.
cemetery. Yes, and we thought about it. Yes, but each little, almost every little holler has a church and a cemetery, a family cemetery. Also, I need to say that even though we only have 80 families up this holler, we have 80 families up another holler and another holler, and I would guess within this circle we probably have about 2,000 people. We have no public transportation. We have some public water, and a lot of it is, we just use our springs or wells.
Right.
Yes.
I wanted to know, do you have a car lot anywhere in that holler?
Oh, yes, there are.
Not in
Good,
the hollow,
because
but
you
on
need-
the main road, there's two.
Oh, okay, because you need cars to get anywhere you want to get.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's a good point.
But I think that the sense of space, and we don't have public transportation, there's absolutely, the closest Greyhound bus is Knoxville, Tennessee.
Right.
We have to go that far to get onto public transportation, yeah.
It stops in La Follette.
Since when? They
In
stopped
yes, it
Perryville,
does.
at the Mountain View.
Oh, they started it again, because it did close for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm gonna turn this over. Oh, and we go to, oh, that's enough, that's enough.
They stop miles.
Thing we just
upon ownership. They work with the staff and the board to reduce the cost of housing so that everyone on Woodland can be a homeowner. Okay, or special events, organizes Thanksgiving food boxes, resident Christmas party, Earth Day, and all other occasions that we want to celebrate. Our road committee works with the ridges and programs to help keep up the roads on Woodland. They focus on erosion, water drainage, and gravel delivery. Our agri-pantry committee helps residents to improve available lands, provides them with seeds and plants to grow their own food in raised garden beds. They help the community at large with the emergency food program. Okay. And we have our board structure. Bylaws state that the majority of the board is to be made up of woodland leaseholders with other members from the larger community. Presently, there are 7 board members. Our staff, 2 full-time and 6 part-time positions, makes up the staff. Staff gives time to both the Land Trust and Woodland Community Development Corporation. And we're really grateful for them. Okay, we have 6 programs. Okay, the Living Learning Center, a camp facility, offers income and opportunity to experience a week of life in rural Appalachia. While staying with us, mainly college students, have opportunities to interact with local people working and playing. And we have our Pier Landing. Woodland residents and members from the larger community are engaged in a Pier Landing. This program enables the members to borrow money to start a small business while learning from each other. Okay. We have the permaculture program provides residents with a landscape plan which consultants Joni and Liz help each family design. Most home sites have raised garden beds, and some families are growing produce in community garden spaces. Integrated Forest Resource Management, IFRM. Woodland has 320 acres of land to sustain the community. UT contracts with us to manage 112 acres of land they own on Roses Creek. There are 22 home sites, 6 acres of common land, garden land, an open-air theater, and 5 acres for business development. The forest is the place we grow and harvest timber for housing, dig roots, fish and hunt, and learn about life beyond our lifetime. Okay? We have our...
What she did for us. But the one thing I can remember most clearly is that when she was a teacher, she organized down in La Follette or wherever the trade school is, and she somehow convinced them to let her bring 18 electric typewriters up to the community. She drove up from La Follette nightly for several weeks, and we took a typing, shorthand, and bookkeeping class. And it was just local people, you know, and she taught us. And there was a crisis during that time. And my experience with public schools was that the rules came first and you as a person came second. But we had a young man in our community and whose brother and sister is with us today, and he had a really bad spell during that time. And we just kind of fell apart as a class, and Joyce didn't get mad at us. She just, you know, she walked the walk with us. And she did a lot of other things, but she grounded herself in our community and accepted our values and gave us validity in our values of family and what it takes to be a community. There's two networks here today that I'm part of, but I'm, as Woodland, the one that has the most meaning for the most number, I think, of people, or the most immediate one, is TNCET. And Michelle Flynn, would you stand up, please? Michelle represents Tennessee Network for Community Economic Development. Don't sit down. She drives from Nashville, and she started something 3 years ago as an effort to empower people in communities to develop small business. She arranged for us to have monies, which as a peer lending group we control. But even more than that is it's a statewide network. So even in our communities, as we control this $5,000 cash credit line and all the tools that go with that, we also get together across the states from different areas, and we sit and kind of replicate the same thing in a state meaning way. And she does advocacy work, because part of the problem that is defined by people in communities is what stops us. Michelle has the ability to translate into language, and she lives in Nashville.
Which is 5 hours.
And she comes up at, you know, she made the commitment to come twice a month to our rural community. And she also goes to West Tennessee toward Memphis, which I think is just about as far in some ways. She, you know, she comes across different cultures and brings us together. So we really want to appreciate Michelle and what she's enabled Woodland people to continue doing.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
Okay. Strategic allies can be represented by FAHI, which is Federation of Appalachian Housing Enterprise. The strategic ally is somebody who we define as going the same place you're going, which is like about building houses, and you take different paths, but so you can work with each other, but not necessarily use the same mechanisms. But the goal is to have good, decent, affordable housing. We may just take different paths. Do we have anyone from FAHI here today? We tried really hard to get people here. FAHI. How many people here have worked with FAHI? Perhaps that's a good question. Some people know about FAHI, and we define that as a strategic ally from the Woodland Group's viewpoint. So these were mechanisms that let us be where we were.
Excuse me, would you define FAHI again? What is that about? I'm not familiar.
It's a strategic ally.
Federation
of Appalachian
Housing
Enterprise.
Okay, thank you.
The negative happens a lot of times because we have a fear of losing what we've gained, so we try to just hold on and maintain a state of being, and that's not very good a lot of times. The indifference that seems to be there in community but really is not. I think, from my personal experience, it's because you feel hopeless, because you don't have any power to make things different. So if you try to and you fail, you just did something different. And collectively, we know that we don't have much influence with our government. When Marie was talking about all our communities, there's 4 incorporated towns in Campbell County. 30% of our population lives in incorporated towns, which means you have a tax base. 70% of our population lives in unincorporated towns, which gives you very little voice in governance. It also means you don't have what people normally do, such as garbage pickup, public water, sanitation, and all these other things, trash pickups. It ain't there, you know. We have families on Woodland, and we have, I think, the whole spectrum of personalities and where people are at and where they're going. We also have the ages. We have people from grandchildren on the CLT to the grandmothers on the CLT. Some of us are related and some of us are not. We're failures we learn from. Someone told me once that it's not a failure if you learn something from it. So I'm saying that we've had a lot of learnings. Perhaps because part of it is we had a vision that we didn't quite know how to voice, so we had to learn how to vision from our own values. which was not something we had been taught in our community. So we've learned to do that. But one of the visions was we really wanted houses. And then, so we figured out how to build some houses, but then they said empty because we couldn't quite get the mechanism going of moving. You can move people in, but if they can't pay for the house, what happens?
They're out. Yeah.
Well, it's not that they're just out. It's also that if you give people a house, they do have a house, but you created a barrier for building a next house. So for me, it's about sustainability and replicating. Besides which, I think the closest parallel I know is in the early 70s when I first went on food stamps. There was a lot of hoops you had to jump through to do these things. But when I got them, I would have fit with you. If you had told me, Carol, these are going to create a dependency on you, I'd have argued with you because I couldn't get a job and I'd never been anywhere where I couldn't get a job. It took me 15 years to learn about the dependency they create. So that's some of the learnings, that we've done. And the Land Trust gives us a vehicle to move beyond those learnings while feeling safe and secure. We have ways of conversing about the pricing of the houses and how to go from there. We have found answers. 3 things we at Woodland believe that we could teach other neighborhood, and we have women, but it could be neighborhood communities. 1 is how to retain assets within the community and for the community, value-added processes. We can help people see how land is the basis for a rural economy, and we're defining economy as more than money. We can help people understand how to incorporate it as a community land trust. Things that we would like to learn from others. How to gain public support for our efforts, not just nationally, but very locally. 20 years ago, we were, as a community, even though we were related to people in the community, the idea that we were collectively owning something smacked of communism. We've got beyond that barrier in the local community. We haven't figured out how to let people really grasp it and own it themselves. How to generate a local currency. And part of that is we do a lot of barter, but how to make it safe to be visible with it is part of one of the challenges there. And this is for anybody in this room. We really want to know who can share with us the best kept secrets on how to get around regulations. I'm not doing a good job of bringing this to closure, but what I want to say is I know we're out of time. And my facilitator's over here looking at me and giving me the evil eye.
Where did they go?